Hello and welcome to Houston. We have a problem. This is a little mini episode I'm calling episode 1.5. I've been getting asked a lot of questions about how the GameStop squeeze will squoze. And, well, the other meme stocks, AMC, Bed Bath & Beyond, you name it. This is something that's kind of piqued my interest, and I've tried to run some thought experiments. And while I'm still working on my episode 2 on healthcare, which is, let's face it, it's a big topic, and it's taken a lot more writing than I anticipated, but it's going to be good. It's going to cover a lot, and I think it will open some eyes. Until then, let's think about this. Something simple and easy and fast I can do. However we feel it will turn out, it's most likely going to be something different than we expect. Why is that? Basically because there's an adversary involved. They're working day and night trying not to just survive, but to thrive and defeat us. So we have to work through these possibilities and assume that because we have an adversary, it's not going to be the perfect mother of all squeezes that will just ultimately give us all of our riches without a fight. And we've got to kind of consider what obstacles do we have keeping us from achieving this goal. Well, first of all, we think about what the perfect squeeze would look like for us and what the perfect squeeze would look like for our adversary. One way I like to think of it is the pandemic model. If you remember a year ago at the outset of the pandemic, you were hearing lots of talk about utilizing the shutdown to flatten the curve. And what was meant by this was they wanted us to slow the transmission of the disease over a longer period of time to reduce the deaths and limit overwhelming the hospitals with lots of cases. And if we hadn't shut down, we would have gotten this maximum pain curve, this curve that just rocketed up as tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of people a day were getting infected. And there was no way our hospital system was going to be able to maintain that at all. And what ended up happening is we flattened the curve. We suppressed how many people got infected by limiting social contact, enacting mitigation efforts like wearing masks and social distancing, etc. And by doing this, it dragged out the pandemic over a longer period of time, but with less maximum pain to the population. We had relatively fewer deaths than we were expecting, and we had fewer hospitalizations. The hospitals were less likely to be overwhelmed, and it gave us time and allowed for us to develop vaccines and to develop treatment methods. And that's kind of the goal. Well, our goal with this squeeze is we want maximum pain for the hedge funds. And that means we want a really, really, really sharp spike with dozens of margin calls happening every single day during the squeeze, and more hedge funds going under and being liquidated and forced to buy back the stock we purchased. And it'll make the squeeze relatively shorter, make the price higher, and the volumes insane. So what the hedge funds want is they want to be able to drag this out over weeks or months so that, a hedge fund might get margin called here, one might get margin called there. And so rather than it taking 10, 14 days for the entire squeeze to happen, it can take 3 months or a year for the squeeze to happen. And that way the volumes stay relatively low. The prices kind of have a lower ceiling, and the hedge funds have a greater chance of surviving in the long term. We want to ensure this doesn't happen. Basically, we want that maximum pain, really high spike, relatively short squeeze with a high price and huge volumes. Okay, so the other question people have is, what happens if the government steps in? Well, then the government can do whatever it wants if it steps in. We are limited in our ability to address that, but there are a few things working against the government stepping in. So let's say the government is a total buzzkill and they stop trading and they end up negotiating some sort of settlement price for our shares in order for the clearinghouses to balance their books. Yeah, it's going to suck. It will. But that settlement price will be for more than what we paid for it. So, in the end, we will come out positive. The problem is that this could cause international investment in the United States to dry up. And the United States government cannot afford to have foreign investment be reallocated to safer, more regulated markets. The U.S. government depends upon having a well-regulated market to entice these investors into a relatively safe, large economy. And by halting trading and negotiating a settlement price, they're going to piss off a lot of international investors who bought into this market specifically because there was the potential for a really massive short squeeze. And the short squeeze is part of the market. It should be expected. What should not be expected is the massive naked short selling that the government has allowed. That's what's going to bring everything down. So if the government has to stop trading and negotiate a settlement price, they're going to have to do it not just for GameStop, but for probably 100, 200, 300 other stocks. And that's just going to be overwhelming. It's going to be easier for them to just print money and let the books get balanced. The other thing that the government has going against it, if it's going to try and stop trading and negotiate some sort of settlement, is that there's a lot of long positions, a lot of really rich hedge funds, a lot of investment banks, a lot of regular banks who are betting on this squeeze to happen. And they want their money. This week I was reading an article about how I think it's Bank of America and a couple other large banks have purchased millions upon millions upon millions of shares of GameStop and other meme stocks. And my thinking is this is a way of hedging against the margins that they've issued for a lot of these hedge funds that will ultimately get called. This is telling me that these banks think these hedge funds are going under and they don't have enough assets to cover what the price will be on this stock. So if they purchase GameStop shares and AMC shares and others, and they have those in their assets, then when the margins get called and those hedge funds run out of money, at least when the government starts printing money, they'll have to buy the shares back from these banks, and maybe they'll even make a killing off of the margins that they have being called on all the hedge funds under them. So I don't see the government stepping in to stop trading. I do see the government stepping in to keep liquidity going through the market. When banks have their assets dry up and cash dry up, it is a chain reaction that ends up flowing through the entire economy. People can't buy cars. They can't buy homes. They can't pay for school. They can't get credit cards. And if that kind of liquidity dries up, then the entire economy, not just the United States, grinds to the halt, but the entire globe. And we know how intertwined all of these banks are. If a hedge fund like Archegos, or a family fund like Archegos can go under and they're worth $30 billion, and we see massive losses posted by Credit Suisse, by Goldman Sachs, by JP Morgan and others. And now we have to imagine that 50, 60, 100 other funds might just be as over leveraged as Archegos is, and they could all get margin called in a matter of days. So, if the investment banks go under, if the big banks go under, then the U.S. government pretty much has to bail them out to keep the entire economy from following close behind. So I think the way the government steps in this case is just to use the printers. Okay, so I was told last time that I made a mistake and I didn't tell everyone to like and subscribe. That's a YouTube thing. So yes, please like and subscribe. Also visit my Patreon, patreon.com/HoustonWade. There will be a treasure hunt this summer that I am setting up, and the clues will be in my podcast. It will be announced on the Patreon first, and it'll be happy hunting for everybody involved. I'm also now on Spotify. You can search for Houston We Have a Problem on Spotify. I'm still trying to figure out how to get it onto iTunes and also on Podbean. I think it's under houstonwade.podbean.com. All right. I'll catch you all when I get episode 2 up. Be sure to jump into the comments. I try to look at what I can and answer questions when I can. If you see any other ways that this squeeze can squoze, list them. I'd love to hear about them. We can discuss them on future versions of this podcast. All right, enjoy your day, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye.